Kid's a wizard because everything he created on the Knight Rider is now true. The cars talk, the cars park themselves, the cars will drive themselves. They can do anything you want them to do, and probably, in the next 10 years, you're going to be able to go outside.
After 40 years of Knight Rider, David Hasselhoff has finally decided to reveal the truth. And it's nothing like the heroic world fans remember. For the first time, he's pulling back the curtain on the dark reality behind the scenes, exposing secrets, mistakes, and personal struggles he kept hidden for decades. He even shares his honest opinion on whether the legendary show should ever return, and his answer may shock longtime fans. But the most haunting part of his story is the moment he could never erase, the leaked video where he was drunk, almost naked, and filmed by his own daughter. It was the lowest point of his life, a moment that nearly destroyed everything. Now Hasselhoff is ready to speak openly, and what he is finally admitting will change the way you look at Knight Rider forever. David Hasselhoff was born on July 17, 1952 in Baltimore, Maryland, into a Roman Catholic household that balanced discipline with warmth. His father, Joseph, worked in corporate security. His mother, Dolores, kept the home running and raised their 5 children. David was the lone boy surrounded by 4 sisters, a quiet child with deep German roots that wouldn't shape his life until much later. His early years were anything but grounded. The family was always on the move, Baltimore to Jacksonville, then Atlanta, then Illinois. Each relocation a reminder that nothing stayed still for long. David remained the perpetual newcomer, shy and uncertain, learning to rebuild himself over and over. But in those restless years, something unexpected formed. The ability to read people, to charm them, to step into whatever space needed filling. Performance wasn't just an interest, it became a survival skill. At 7, he found the one place where the ground finally stopped shifting, the stage. A small role in Peter Pan cracked open a world where he didn't have to be the awkward new kid. He could be anyone. From then on, acting, singing, and dancing weren't hobbies. They were lifelines. His dream was Broadway, and he chased it with a kind of hunger only a lonely child can understand. When the family settled in LaGrange, Illinois, teenage David bloomed. Choir leader, volleyball captain, speech competitor, theater star. He threw himself into everything, desperate to root himself somewhere at last. By graduation in 1970, he had already built the presence and confidence that would later make him a global icon. After high school, David tried settling into Oakland University in Michigan, but the place never felt like it was meant for him. Restlessness pushed him west toward the California Institute of the Arts. Walt Disney's bold experiment and creativity. California didn't just welcome him, it shaped him. At CalArts, he refined everything that had carried him through childhood. His voice, his presence, his ability to shift effortlessly between acting, singing, and dance. 2 years after graduating, his first break arrived in the most uncomfortable way possible. In 1974, desperate to earn his SAG card, he accepted a role in a low-budget, chaotic comedy called Revenge of the Cheerleaders, playing a character with the unfortunate name Boner. He prayed no one would ever see it, but it resurfaced 2 years later under an even more embarrassing title. The film was a disaster, yet it accomplished the one thing he needed. It made him official. He was, at last, a working actor. Then came the job that steadied his momentum. In 1975, he stepped into The Young and the Restless as Dr. William Snapper Foster Jr., the steady anchor of a fractured family. Over 6 years and more than 850 episodes, he became a beloved presence in living rooms across America. When he chose to leave in 1982, the show didn't just write him out, they erased the entire Foster family. That was the weight he carried. But the true turning point arrived later that same year. NBC president Brandon Tartikoff personally picked him to lead Knight Rider. Tartikoff saw something others hadn't, a gentleness wrapped inside heroism. Paired with Kit, a talking, near-indestructible car, David embodied a new kind of screen hero. One who protected, who saved, who believed in second chances. The show became a worldwide sensation. In America, he became a star. In Germany, he became something closer to folklore. Before Knight Rider, though, there had been a stranger chapter. In 1979, he appeared in Star Crash, an Italian sci-fi experiment chasing the shadow of Star Wars. He played a glowing prince with awkward lines and impossible costumes. The movie collapsed under its own ambition, but it revealed something important. David never backed away from risk, even when the risk made him look foolish. Glenn A. Larson had a bold, strangely poetic vision. Take the spirit of a wandering cowboy and merge it with futuristic technology. Michael Knight would become a modern Lone Ranger, And instead of a horse, he'd ride alongside a talking, thinking Trans Am. NBC loved it. Their president, Brandon Tartikoff, had joked there weren't many strong male leads anymore, so Larson simply answered, "Then let the car be the star." Knight Rider premiered on September 26, 1982, and ran until April 4, 1986. Backed by Flag, a secretive fictional agency, Michael was sent on missions too dangerous or too politically messy for anyone else. Larson had already created giants like Magnum, PI, and Battlestar Galactica, but Knight Rider struck a deeper chord. It arrived in an era obsessed with shiny machines and fantasies of high-tech justice. Still, bringing KT to life was far from glamorous. The 1982 Trans Am was hard to obtain. Initially, the team had only one. Designer Michael Sheffey transformed it into the first version of KT. Then fate intervened in the form of a train wreck that destroyed a shipment of brand new Trans Ams. GM couldn't sell them, so they let the show take 10 for just $1 each, with one cruel catch. All had to be destroyed when filming wrapped. Fans still call it a tragedy. Each Kite served a purpose. Some were lightweight stunt versions built from fiberglass. Some hid stunt drivers for tricky shots. The hero car handled close-ups with Hasselhoff. Each build cost around $18,000, and by season 3, KT got a makeover. Spoilers, wings, and new details to stand out from the growing swarm of fan replicas. On screen, Kit felt like a miracle machine. Armor that shrugged off bullets and explosions, a turbo boost that sent it soaring 43 meters, acceleration from 0 to 60 in a fraction of a second. Its glowing red scanner, its eye, was inspired by HAL from 2001, A Space Odyssey. It could read X-rays, monitor Michael's vitals, and slip into silent mode. Much of its fantasy tech eventually became real. Collision avoidance systems, biometric seats, voice-assisted controls. Fans believed Kit was worth millions. In reality, each build cost closer to $100,000, but none of that mattered. Kids wanted the toys, teens wanted the car. Parents loved watching with their children. Critics dismissed it. TV Guide gave it 21%, Rotten Tomatoes 35%. But the audience crowned it a hit. By 1983, KT toys had become the dominant Christmas gift. And when Knight Rider ended in 1986, it felt abrupt, like a hero riding off too soon. Yet the legend didn't fade. It kept traveling the world long after the engine went quiet. NBC kept rerunning Knight Rider long after it ended, and audiences always returned. The show aged into a cult comfort. Warm, familiar, almost mythical. When NBC tried reviving it in 2008, it failed fast. They'd lost the heart of the original, and no one felt that sting more than David Hasselhoff. To him, Knight Rider wasn't just a job. He once said he would have lived inside that world forever. Fans often told him, "You helped me through a dark time," and that meant more than all the Baywatch fame. For Hasselhoff, the show was never about car stunts. It was about hope, redemption, and saving people. It remained the role he treasured most. But behind the sleek heroics, reality was far harsher. The set was chaotic and dangerous. Kit wasn't one car, but four. The pristine hero car, stripped-down stunt versions, lightweight jump cars, and hollow shells built to be destroyed. To make Kit drive itself, stunt coordinator Jack Gill would lie flat in the footwell, steering blind. Pontiac originally gave them 3 Trans Ams, but everything shifted in 1983 when a train derailment destroyed a new shipment of Trans Ams. GM sold 10 wrecked cars to the show for a symbolic $1 with one rule: all had to be crushed afterward. The production honored it with a wrecking ball. The stunts were spectacular on screen, but punishing in real life. One famous 85 FT jump in Thousand Oaks ripped off the license plate, knocked a camera loose, and even sent Hasselhoff's jacket flying. The footage was reused repeatedly because the car didn't survive. Many didn't. Hasselhoff paid physically, breaking his back twice and his neck once. He now walks with a titanium plate and 6 screws. In one scene, he had to back KT out of a moving semi at 50 mph, drop to the pavement, slam into drive, spin a 180, and roar off. No effects, no padding, just raw skill. Gill trained Hasselhoff at Saugus Speedway in spins, drifts, and fishtails. Soon, Hasselhoff could handle nearly everything except the lethal jumps. Still, they clashed over who controlled KT in self-driving shots. Gill, hidden under the dash, would shout, "I'm driving," while Hasselhoff insisted otherwise. And then there was Hasselhoff's unlikely rival, William Daniels, the voice of KIT. They never met during filming, but audiences adored Kit so much that Hasselhoff noticed. Daniels treated the voice as a real character. guarding it with fierce care. When they finally met at a Christmas party, it felt like two halves of the legend finally connecting. Off camera, David Hasselhoff was unraveling. His drinking, once hidden behind charm and confidence, began to seep into his work. Crew members later admitted that during season 3, production stalled repeatedly. Exhaustion, they called it, though everyone knew what that meant. Even during the massive 1984 episode Goliath Returns, the team quietly rearranged schedules to give him time to pull himself together each morning. Years later, his ex-wife would say he'd already been drinking hard back then. And in 2007, the world finally saw the truth. A shaky video of him on the floor, shirtless, slurring, wrestling with a hamburger. The man who once told millions that one man can make a difference couldn't even steady his own hands. The emotional toll came early. In 1983, a 15-year-old leukemia patient named Randy visited the set. After the boy died, a letter from his parents arrived, and it hit Hasselhoff like a blow. Suddenly, Michael Knight wasn't just a character. He felt like a responsibility. He begged NBC for stories with heart. Less about explosions and more about meaning. But carrying that idealized hero on his shoulders became its own burden. He later said it almost destroyed him, that it took angels to pull him back from the edge. When Knight Rider ended in 1986, Hasselhoff slammed into a different kind of wall. Hollywood only saw Michael Knight, the guy with the talking car, and nothing else. Every serious role he pitched was dismissed. The film fizzled. Between 1986 and 1989, his American career stagnated. Even he joked that people seemed to think he'd only ever acted opposite Kai-T. So he looked somewhere unexpected, Germany. And there, far from Hollywood's doubts, he found the success and second chance he'd been chasing. In 1988, David Hasselhoff released Looking for Freedom, an English remake of a German hit. But the timing was everything. Germany was still cut in half, tension in the air, hope in short supply. The song wasn't just catchy, it felt like a promise. It shot straight to #1 in West Germany and refused to budge for 8 weeks. Lingering on the charts for nearly half a year, it went platinum, selling over 500,000 copies. By 1989, Hasselhoff wasn't just popular. He'd become a strange kind of symbol. And when he performed atop the Berlin Wall on New Year's Eve, wrapped in a glowing jacket, fireworks cracking around him, and a sea of people stretching into the night, it looked like he was singing a country toward its future. But in the US, his momentum was sliding. Then Baywatch appeared, only to flop instantly. Its 1989 debut ranked near the bottom. NBC canceled it, and the production company folded. Most actors would have mourned the loss and moved on. Hasselhoff did the opposite. In 1991, he bet everything on a dead show. He poured in his own money, partnered with the creators, and bought the rights outright. He wasn't just the face of Baywatch anymore. He became its engine, and he negotiated the one thing that would change his life: a share of the profits. What happened next was beyond imagination. By 1996, Baywatch had become the most watched show on the planet. More than 1 billion people tuned in every week, 1 out of every 5 humans alive. It aired in nearly 150 countries, was translated into dozens of languages, and generated more than $1 billion in syndication. Surprisingly, most of the viewers were women, drawn not just to the sun and surf, but to its mix of romance, rescues, and strong female leads. Mitch Buchanan, with his red shorts and unshakable resolve, became an icon of 90s pop culture. Hasselhoff appeared in 220 episodes between 1989 and 2001. When he left, they didn't kill him off. They let him drift into legend with an underwater disappearance. He returned in 2003 for Baywatch, Hawaiian Wedding, playing a resurrected amnesiac Mitch, proving that even his fictional self couldn't escape the tide. Behind the scenes, Hasselhoff was quietly cementing a fortune. His salary peaked at around $100,000 per episode, but the true gold came from the royalties, reportedly up to $4 million a year, long after the series ended. He spun the brand into movies and the oddball spin-off Baywatch Nights, which began as a noir detective drama and somehow morphed into supernatural chaos in an attempt to chase the X-Files craze. Even after his divorce settlement slashed his wealth from $100 million to roughly $10 million, Baywatch continued to pay. And in 2018, when the show was remastered in HD, a new stream of income opened. The brand simply refused to fade, just like Hasselhoff himself. In early 2002, David Hasselhoff came terrifyingly close to drinking himself to death. His body was failing when he checked into the Betty Ford Center. And years later, in 2011, he admitted something that stunned even longtime fans. Doctors told him his blood alcohol level was the highest they had ever seen in a living patient. By all logic, he shouldn't have survived. He insisted it wasn't a publicity stunt or a Hollywood ritual. He went because he was dying, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and there was nowhere left to run. But his collapse hadn't begun there. In 2001, he'd made an earlier attempt at sobriety. He lasted 8 days in treatment before slipping into a taxi, fleeing the facility, and heading straight to a bar. He was found later that night unconscious in a hospital, a moment he later described as his first true warning. He returned to rehab soon after and admitted publicly that he needed help. Still, addiction rarely surrenders quickly. Then came May 3, 2007, the moment that would follow him for the rest of his life. His 16-year-old daughter, Taylor Ann, recorded him in a Las Vegas hotel room, sprawled shirtless on the carpet, too intoxicated to lift a cheeseburger to his mouth. The pain of the video wasn't in the image, it was in her voice. You could hear her begging, trying to reach the father she loved. "You promise me you're not going to get alcohol tonight, okay?" She later explained she filmed it because he never remembered what he became when he drank. The clip exploded across the internet, one of the first true viral moments. More than 1 billion people eventually watched it, and for many, it was the shocking evidence of how far the once invincible hero had fallen. And tragically, that year was only the beginning of his darkest spiral. In July 2006, while his divorce from Pamela Bach was tearing his life apart, Hasselhoff found himself spiraling in public. At Heathrow Airport, he was scheduled to fly to Los Angeles, but he never made it onto the plane. Witnesses said he was unsteady, smelled of alcohol, and could barely stay upright. Airline staff refused to let him board. He told them the divorce was breaking him. His publicist later blamed antibiotics and insisted he simply chose a later flight. But the story had already spread. And on that same day, halfway across the world in LA, his marriage officially ended. Things only grew uglier. The divorce spilled out of the courtroom and into the headlines when private documents were accidentally released in August 2006. The accusations were explosive. Hasselhoff claimed Bach was using cocaine. Bach accused him of infidelity and abuse. Suddenly, the public wasn't watching a celebrity's rough patch. They were watching a personal collapse unfold like primetime drama. Their split quickly escalated into a painful custody battle. Initially, each parent was assigned one daughter, Taylor Ann with him, Haley with her mother. But that fragile arrangement was shattered. Bach sought a restraining order, alleging violence. The court denied it, but ordered both to keep their distance. Months later, the judge awarded Hasselhoff full custody of both girls. He later referenced this ruling when requesting reduced alimony, bringing payments down from $21,000 to $10,000 a month. By 2010, something in Hasselhoff finally shifted. Instead of running from his past, he began disarming it with humor. During his Comedy Central roast, he even mocked the infamous burger video that once embarrassed him in front of the world. He later said the roast felt like therapy, not because he was proud of those moments, but because he was finally strong enough to face them. He often repeated that it took angels pushing him to the edge of death before he truly understood how close he'd come to losing everything. He also tried to rebuild his personal life. After his first marriage to Catherine Hickland ended in 1989, a union once charmingly recreated on an episode of Knight Rider, he spent years drifting. Then in 2011, he met Welsh shop assistant Haley Roberts while filming Britain's Got Talent. What began as a fan asking for a photo turned into a 7-year romance. They married in Italy in 2018 and honeymooned in the Maldives, finally bringing him a sense of calm he hadn't felt in decades. But peace never lasted long for Hasselhoff. On March 5, 2025, tragedy struck when Pamela Bach was found dead at 62. Her passing ruled a suicide. The news rattled Hollywood and reopened wounds that everyone thought had long since scarred over. Their daughters, now adults, were left to navigate a grief far heavier than the storms their family had weathered before. In January 2021, David Hasselhoff revealed something that quietly rewired the way fans saw Knight Rider. For decades, the series had been marketed as a futuristic spectacle, a sleek talking car, a turbo-boosted fantasy, a playground of gadgets. But Hasselhoff insisted that was never the point. "It's not about a talking car," he said. "It's about the bond between Michael and Kitty and the belief that one person can make a difference." That single line reframed the entire show. While the world focused on the tech, Hasselhoff had always seen the heart beneath the chrome. And when he spoke again in June 2021 on Kelly Clarkson's show, he pushed the idea even further. After nearly 4 decades, he said, the once fantastical cars of Knight Rider had become reality. Self-driving, self-parking, voice-controlled vehicles no longer amazed him. What mattered, he insisted, was the friendship at the story's core, a connection fans never realized they'd been responding to all along. He even admitted something unexpected. Knight Rider wasn't really an acting job for him. It was a driving job. In 2021, he laughed while remembering how proud he was of mastering stunt moves, reverse 180s, sudden spins, sliding corners. No CGI. Everything was real. Everything was dangerous. He said his favorite trick was spraying WD-40 on the tires, cranking the engine, and tearing through a scene in one take. They'd yell, "Action, Knight Rider," and he'd blast forward, shouting, "Woohoo!" He joked that half the time he was having too much fun to worry about whether the acting was any good. But for viewers, the thrill was unforgettable. Yet the joy didn't last. Since 2013, Hasselhoff had been trying to resurrect Knight Rider. He held the rights for nearly a decade, but no studio would commit. "I couldn't get a bite," he said. That finally changed when screenwriter TJ Fixman, himself a lifelong fan, jumped on board. For the first time in years, Hasselhoff let himself hope again. He didn't know whether he'd appear in the reboot, but emotionally, he was all in. Directors like James Gunn and even James Wan discussed potential versions. Gunn later confirmed that he and Hasselhoff had explored the idea of updating the series, but the timing never aligned, and so the dream drifted in limbo. By May 2025, the reboot remained stuck in development hell. Still, Hasselhoff held on to one unwavering condition. If Knight Rider ever returned, it had to feel like the original. Not just fast cars and explosions, but the soul of the show. The loyalty, the friendship, the belief that even one man and one machine could still change the world.